Hey everybody, it's Mark Pereira. I just want to, check in with everybody and let everybody know that we're working really hard in the society and we're trying to get everything going that we've been putting together. Our books are coming together. We got new changes happening. We've been cleaning up a lot of our chats. We're getting rid of like full on just like open chat, social media chats, and we're really bringing in like more focused, like topic focused stuff. And it's really great, man. There's a lot of really great work happening and a lot of really great people involved. And today I want to talk to everybody about ancestral religion. Okay, this is a very important topic for us. It's something very important that we talk about because it's necessary for us to understand exactly what ancestral religion means. If we're going to talk about ancestral religion, the religion of our ancestors, what comes from the past, then we have to really be honest with ourselves about what that means. What does it mean to have an ancestral religion? Some people think that that just means like we're just talking about race, or we're talking about DNA, or we're talking about like, the people that we descended from. And ethnicity and nationality and things like that have a part to play in the role of what we're doing and what we're discussing. But ancestral religion means that the religion itself comes from the ancestors, right? And so in order for the religion to come from the ancestors, it has to have an ancestral source. So the thing I want to talk about here is the idea of prostration. Now, anybody who's kept up with the Northern Society work knows that prostration is something that we've been pushing, we've been telling people about, we've been trying to teach people about, and showing them that this is what our ancestors did. This is how this religion is practiced. There is no other way around it. There's literally like, we all kind of fell for this. These were like books that were written in the 70s. They got popular. They became kind of a dogma. People got raised up in them. They think that's the way it is and all that stuff. And nobody ever stopped to question it. Like, is this the way it is? Is this the practice of the faith? Is this what it means to be a heathen or a Germanic polytheist? Is this what it means to do this, right? And so they never questioned it. They just accepted it as what it is. They saw it as some sort of rebellion against Christianity, some sort of opposition to the Abrahamic cults, right? And said, well, this is what I'm going to do because it's different. It separates us from them, and therefore we're going to embrace that for what we are. But the fact of the matter is that in order for this to be an ancestral tradition, it has to come from the ancestors. And in order for it to come from the ancestors, it has to come from the sources, right? Because without the sources, we have nothing. If we don't have the sagas and the Eddas and the histories and all this information that's come down to us through the literature, then we don't have anything. We don't even have the names of the gods. We have nothing. And so people sit there and come to us and they get upset when we challenge these things, and they tell us that, oh, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, and this is Abrahamic and that's Christian and blah, 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 right? And it's like, well, no, we don't allow people to bully us, and we don't allow people to sit there and just come up with these arbitrary terms and these ridiculous concepts with no evidence behind them, and then just allow you to come in there and tell us like how we're going to practice our faith, right? It's okay if you want to pretend that this is the way the religion it was in the past and the way the religion should be. It's okay if you want to pretend that, but you can't get us to pretend along with you, right? The people who want to actually practice authentic ancestral religion want the religion to come from the ancestors, not from you, not from your cults of personality, not from the online celebrities that you follow, none of that stuff, not from the books that you've read by New Age authors or any of that stuff. We want to follow the actual ancestral polytheistic religion of our Germanic ancestors. That's what we're trying to follow. That's what we build everything on. That's what we base everything on. So you have to ask yourself at some point, am I following ancestral religion or am I following progressive religion, right? Because that's the difference. And there is no black and white. I mean, there is no gray area in there. It's black and white. Like it's either ancestral or it's progressive. It's either going to come from the ancestors, from the source material, from what we have, from the research, or it's going to come from just something, that you just made up, which is progressive. I get to come on here into this religion and just make up whatever I want to and pretend like it is actually a part of an actual ancestral authentic path. And you don't get to do that. You don't get to, you don't get to you don't get to make up that stuff. You don't get to just say that I just get to do what I want. And I just get to make it up as I go. Or I get to embrace these authors from the 70s who wrote just ridiculous nonsense. And we've actually challenged some of these guys, and they don't even care about the sources. We're making it up. We just pulled it right out and just made it up. The sources are what matters. The sagas, the Eddas. The poetic Edda of absolutely is the top dog. And then you can look at the Prose Edda as commentary, but it has a lot of problems with it. Saxo, the Roman histories, a lot of these different things. We can rebuild this religion. Like the Norrøna Society knows at this point, we know that we can rebuild this religion. Absolutely, from the top to the bottom. We're working on a book called the Ivanruner, right? And it's basically going to be our orthopraxy. It's going to be our religious practices. We're going to have every single thing, every source cited, every single detail broken down. You will know everything about how to practice this religion when we get done with it, right? And the thing is that you're going to have a choice that's going to be made, because the biggest excuse that was made, and that's really the thing you see with New Age belief, the New Agers and all these people who have all these different ideas, is it's just a long list of excuses to not do the work, to not put the work into it and figure out what actually was going on. It's a list of excuses. Like, oh, well, we didn't have enough information. We don't have enough to understand what's happening. We don't know what took place. We don't know what we had, and we don't, we have all these different things that happened, and we got conquered, and blah, 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 blah. And it just goes on and on and on. And there's just a never-ending list of excuses. Now the big excuses is that some of them are just coming out and saying that the religion should be progressive, that we should just make it up as we go. And not, kneel before the gods because that's dishonorable, or that's Abrahamic or whatever. And it's like, if we can prove that it's not Abrahamic, then it shows that what you believe is a lie, that you've been taught something that isn't true. And so if it's not true, then it's not dishonorable. It's not weakness. It's not something that denigrates the faith. It is the faith. What denigrates it is when liars come along and play some kind of hustle and convince a bunch of people so they can sell a bunch of books, people who want to develop a counterculture, people who want to be rebellious, people who want to be thralls, people who don't want to be noble and honorable and actually stand before their gods and see their gods as a higher power and kneel before them in honor and devotion. Right? And we see this all the way back to Tacitus's Germania, through the sagas. There's like 15 sources that we collected and found that basically break it down, that this is exactly what they happened. And there's not a single source that says that it's the other way around, right? That they refused to kneel before the gods, that they didn't, that they didn't worship the gods, they didn't pray to the gods, all that stuff, all that nonsense that you see from the Brosa crowd. People telling us that this is not a faith. This is not, they're saying this is not a religion, that it's something else, and it's like the first thing you have to do when you're looking at that is always look at other polytheistic religions. Don't pay attention to these people because these people just make up stuff. They just pull anything out. They live by their feelings. And so when they live by their feelings, they don't want to follow something that has actual foundations to it and actual sources, and something that would hold them accountable for what they say. No, they just want to make it up as they go. They want to just keep making things up, inventing things, creating things as they go. They like that stuff. They like doing that. And it's like, it's okay if you want to do that. If that's your thing, you like creating things and making things up, and you want to be progressive religion and all that stuff, that's fine. But that's not also true. That's not heathenry. That's not Teutonic polytheism. And it's not ancestral at all. Because ancestral is a tradition, and a tradition comes from something. It comes from a source. It has an origin. So if you look at Tacitus's Germania, and I made a Facebook post about this today, if you look at Tacitus Germania, you can actually find things in his book that we find later in the sagas. Like he mentions the women's hair being cut off when they committed adultery. Well, we have the story of Loki cutting off Sif's hair, and this is written in the 10th century, 1,000 years after Tacitus, and Loki accuses Sif of adultery in Lokasenna. Then we see like things like animal augury and rune, pulling the runes and stuff like that. All these different things that they had that we can trace to later sources that were, that they were basically 1,000 years old at that point. And so these are very, very ancient, and they kept those traditions. So this whole idea that our religion needs to evolve and it just needs to keep evolving, and that's an excuse people make up to just McWorld everything. So I can just, just invent it as I go. It's got to evolve, so I'll just invent things. I'll just keep creating things. Or they use the argument that the tribes all had different views, and so therefore I can just be an individualist and just make it up as I go and just make it, this is for my tribe. But then like you also look in the Germania and you see that the first half of the book describes exactly, the core principles of everything that they shared as a universal culture that they connected to in their Germanic people. Right? And then he goes into the difference. And they did have differences, there's no doubt about it. But those differences weren't like on a whim that somebody could just create it in any moment and be like, well, this is it. This is what we're doing, And so the thing is, you have to ask yourself is, do I belong to an ancestral tradition or do I belong to a progressive tradition? Because an ancestral tradition means that I'm going to look to the ancestors. I'm going to look to the past. I'm going to look to the source material. And I'm not just going to keep just inventing things or making up excuses. Saying that we should use psychology or saying that we should just be progressive and because I don't like kneeling. That's what it is. I don't like this. So therefore, I'm going to change it into what I want it to be. And that is the number one thing that we see in heathenry. Like it is, without hands down, that is the number one problem that happens in every single case, every single debate, every single issue is people who say, I don't like this, so therefore the religion must change for me, period, right? Whereas we come along, we're not trying to build cults of personality. We're not trying to tell you what you want to hear so you'll follow us or like us or buy our books or anything like that. We're going to challenge you. And when we challenge you, sometimes it's going to make you angry. Because you're going to hear things about the religion that you don't like. And you're like, well, I've already adopted this religion as my faith, my life. I'm passionate about this. I believe in it. But, rather than changing myself for the religion, I want the religion to change for me. And that's just not how that works in any way, shape, or form. And I know that makes a lot of people angry because they want the religion to change for them. They wanted to have this malleable faith that they can just twist and turn and make it whenever they want to and not have a tradition. So you have to start calling these people out. You belong to a progressive path. That's not also true. That's not heathenry. That's not traditional. And it's definitely not ancestral. Because the very definition of the word ancestral means it comes from the ancestors. And when you're rejecting that and saying, I get to make it up whatever I want to, that's what you're doing. When you have all these excuses, these things that you put together that says, I can create anything I want, and just pull it out. There it is. This is my religion. Then you're not following an ancestral path, and you're not following a tradition. This religion was called Forn Sed by our ancestors, which meant the ancient customs. And Forn Sed, we follow the Sedian path. Forn Sed means that it is what it is. You saw in Tacitus Germania, 1,000 years at least, these traditions were held. And that's what they were. We can find those traditions and trace them into later books. And it shows that that Tacitus was right, that he was showing the traditions of these people and they were authentic, what he was breaking down, and that they lasted into the conversion eras 1,000 years later. It wasn't something that just evolved overnight or they just changed it whenever they wanted to, or they didn't like this, they didn't like that. They'd pick and choose and cherry pick everything they wanted to. It was something that lasted 1,000 years. That's a long time. And that's as far as we know. I mean, that's just Tacitus coming across this culture, and at the time, and there it is. This is the earliest account we have on it. It probably lasted 1,000 years before then, or maybe further, and further back beyond that. So we have to consider these things. We can't just say like this religion is whatever it is. We have to say this is a tradition. And in order to have that tradition, we first have to rebuild the traditions. We have to understand where it comes from, take the sources that we have, and then meticulously put them back together so that we can start with a foundation. And then if it evolves over the next 1,000 years, it won't evolve much. It has to evolve organically and slowly and with time and grow like the roots of a tree. And a tree doesn't grow overnight. It takes a very, very long time for that to happen. And that's how we have to see it. That's how we have to look at it. And that's how we have to protect it.